How can something times nothing equal nothing? How can my hand go through nothing and disappear? This is what 1 times 1 equaling 1 has got us. This inconsistency of our monies and our economy is sitting in the balance. And until we make that change, we're in trouble. We're gonna be stunted as a species.
Could it be conceivable that our understanding of mathematics has been fundamentally flawed all along? Terrance Howard seems to think so.
Now, my biggest question, well, another thing based on what's my greatest accomplishment, would have been to question mathematical fallacy that 1 times 1 equals 1. Because how could an action times an action not have a reaction?
Terrance just revealed what he discovered on the calculator. It seems he found something influential.
See, what I had to do, what they didn't know when I first came out and talked about the number system, they didn't know that I had already discovered that in the calculator. They didn't know that I had discovered 4 supersymmetrical systems based off of 1 times 1 equaling 2.
If a multiplying 1 times 1 stays 1, then the definition of multiplying, which is increase or cause to increase greatly in number or quantity, must be wrong.
If you got an iPhone, it's really great. Just go to your calculator. And you heard me say that 1 times 1 equals 2.
You're getting a lot of trouble for saying that.
Let's understand the meaning behind it.
Yep.
If to multiply means to make more, to increase a number, how can 1 times 1 equaling 1 be part of the multiplication table?
Terrance questioned the logic behind the multiplication table, particularly the concept of 1 times 1 equaling 1, which seems contradictory to the idea of multiplication as making more.
Because every action has a natural reaction. So I was like, how did they come up with this irrational and illogical set of things? If to multiply means to make more, then how can 1 times 1 equaling 1 be part of a multiplication table? It fails to satisfy the term multiply. So questioning that, and in the first, second, third grade, as I came along, that courage towards curiosity and an unbridled passion towards finding the truth, which therefore the Bible or any other book has to be held. You have to question it.
Howard doesn't hold back, slamming the absurdity of the math blunder. With a simple calculator, he lays bare the illogical loop in mathematics that's been fooling us all.
And I think in order for us to reach the future, we have to examine that. Do you guys know about loops in math? Do you believe in loops? Do you know the square root of 2? Do you think that's a loop? Do you believe that the square root of 2 is the square root of 2? Yes or no? Hands up, no? Hello? Oh, I want y'all to take out your phone for a minute then. We're gonna do one thing. Everybody got a phone? Put it on the calculator and turn it to the side so you can get all the long numbers out of it. Okay? Now I want you to put in 2 and square root it. 2, hit the square root, you'll get 1.414213562373095 ... right? Now I want you guys to do me a favor, cube it. It'll see right over there, it'll be x to the 3. Can y'all do it? Have you cubed it? It'll see 2.828, 4271, 2174, 6190. Now that makes sense. I want you guys to do me a favor, divide it by 2. Got that number? Cube it again. Divide it by 2, cube it again, and I want you to do that until the end of your lives. And that number will still come up with 2.828, 4271, 2174, 6190. Any other number that you, above 2, that you put in and you cube and you square, cube and square and divide by 2, by the 6th operation, it has moved into an exponential number that you can't even imagine. Any number below 2 that you do that same operation with, it will go into an exponentially small matter and number. This is what we call a loop. It is illogical, it doesn't make sense, and it does not make math make sense. Doesn't that cancel out the very first laws of of motion, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So I was like, how can 1 times 1 equal 1? Well, then I went to the calculator. Oh, my wife. I'll call her in a second. My love. I went to the calculator, and if you go to your calculator, you put 2 in, hit 2.
So you got to turn it
Turn it to the side, turn your calculator to the side, hit 2.
All right.
And then go to the square root, which is on the far left, second column, third one from the top.
Okay.
Second one from, third one from the top.
Yep.
You'll see the square root of 2, hit it. It says 1.414,213,562,373,095.
Yep.
Now, I want you to cube it. Hit X to the third.
Which is in the third column.
And I want somebody else to hit times 2.
Okay, so I'm cubing mine.
You cube it, you're going to get 2.828, 4271, 2174, 6190.
Okay.
That's the same value you get when you multiply it by 2. Now do me a favor, divide it by 2. Divide by 2, hit equal, and cube it again. Hit X to the third.
It's 2. Mm-hmm.
Divide by 2. You get back to 2.828, 4271, 2174, 6190. Divide by 2, hit equal, go back to X to the third. You're going to see this loop. You're going to go back from 1.414, 213, 562, 373, 095. You'll be back at 2.828, 4271, 2174, 6190. That's like saying x cubed is equal to 2x, which is equal to x plus x. That's an unnatural equation. But every quantum physics and quantum mechanics theory and equation is based off of that mathematical fallacy, that lie.
Terrance made it crystal clear. Finding the truth is crucial. And you know what? Questioning the math mess-ups that already exist? Totally fair game.
I need to know whether, because the truth does not matter being examined. It's just the lie that doesn't like being examined. Okay. You're not supposed to ask those things, but the truth always welcomes thorough examination, rigor. That's what we're supposed to, that's what our math was supposed to do. So how do you have where the square root of 2, when you cube it, has the same value as the square root of 2 when you multiply it by 2? That's like making x cubed equal to 2x, which is equal to x plus x. That's an unnatural equation. So that means the math is off. How can you multiply by 0, but you can't divide by it without it becoming an infinity when division is the inverse operation of multiplication? That's how you check your multiplication, is you divide it back. So if you can't divide it back, then it's unreal. And in the scriptures, Jesus didn't mind being questioned.
No.
So why would the Bible, or the people that promote the Bible, why would they question or be upset with someone questioning whether these traditions are actually from the Creator? And if they're from the Creator, you'll know. So for me, it was important to find the truth. That's all I care about. I care about the truth and make way for life.
What we need to do is, the first thing in math is you're supposed to have a balance equation, which 1 times 1 equals 1 is an unbalanced equation.
The things that make our math works, like if I said to you, what's 1 times 1? What'd you say, 1? It equals 1? Now, what would Newton say is that? Action times an action. That's a reaction, right? Anybody in here that thinks 1 times 1 equals 1, then you give me 2 pounds and I'll give you a pound back. And we'll call that even, right? Because 1 times 1 equals 1. An unbalanced equation. What we need to do is, the first thing in math is you're supposed to have a balanced equation. 1 times 1 equaling 1 is an unbalanced equation. But the identity element, which is like the Jim Crow laws of the 60s, they say that anything multiplied by 1 becomes that same number as itself. Well, the laws of physics has to break down in order for that to take place. Action and reaction for 1 times 1 to equal 1. In comparison to if I said, what's a dollar times a dollar? Anybody know it's a dollar? Well, what's a dime times a dime, or 10 pence?
10 pence, yeah.
10 pence times 10 pence? That's a pound, right? 10 pence times 10 pence? Is that right, honey? What about 100 pence times 100 pence? That's a pound times a pound, right? That's $100, ain't it? What about a quarter? What about 4 quarters times 4 quarters? That's $1, right? That's a pound, right? Well, that's $4. Now, all of these things are legal. The banks can say $1 times $1 is $1 and give you that. Or the banks can say to a friend, $1 times $1 is a quarter times a quarter. It's 4 quarters times 4 quarters, and give that person $4. They can say to another person, $1 times $1 is 100 pence times 100 pence. That person gets $100. So that money is generated. And this is all legal.
Our science might be stuck because of math's problems, but could it be that we've been misled by the laws of math and physics? Let's hear Terrance out.
It's being received because people got their calculators. It's being received because the thing about geometry, like somebody can have an equation and they can confuse a lot of people with an equation. They can confuse a lot of people with a long lecture. But geometry is its own proof. Symmetry, supersymmetry is its own proof. The eyes look at, well, it looks right. That in itself, you can't argue with. For years when I was talking about the 1 times 1 equaling 2, the world attacked, and they attacked so vigorously and viciously about it. That's where the matrix, that's where it doesn't fit. And that's just one thing. And that's at the very beginning of our math. So they tried to call me crazy about bringing this up, but it's crazy to think that to multiply, you can have 1 times 1 equal 1. And then what about multiplying by 0? How can something times nothing equal nothing? How can my hand go through nothing and disappear? What's happened to the laws of conservation of energy? How can you multiply by 0, but you can't divide by it? You divide by 0, you end up with an infinity. Isn't multiplication an inverse operation of division? Do you think it's not happening in the banks? This is what 1 times 1 equaling 1 has got us. This inconsistency of our monies and our economy is sitting in the balance. And the rest of our future is sitting in the balance because our science has been stunted as a result of the problems in mathematics, because math asks for the basic laws of physics to break down in order for 1 times 1 to equal 1. In order for 1 times 0 to equal nothing, laws of conservation of energy has to disappear. And math is the foundating laws of math is supposed to support the laws of physics. They are arm in arm. They cannot be in controversy with each other. So we need an audit on the Platonic solids. We need an audit on the square root of 2, and we need an audit on action and reaction, or we either got to get rid of, we say 1 times 1 equals 1, and there's no action and reaction. One or the other. You can't have both. And until we make that change, we're in trouble. We're going to be stunted as a species.
Terrance Howard casts doubt on the history of the Creator, which he sees as massively flawed. He believes we must recognize one thing: perfection cannot create imperfection.
The Bible is supposed to be the inspired word of God. Therefore, if what you find one lie in there, then you have to call into question everything else that's been placed there. And I'm not sure that that is the history of the Creator. And I think the Creator is so much more expansive than that. And one thing that we all need to recognize, perfection cannot create imperfection. It cannot make any immortality, or eternal cannot create something that is non-eternal. You know, and everything inside the universe is alive. And what people don't recognize is that the entire universe is the Creator, and we are part of that. So we are the Creator within it. And when we do good, then God is good. But when we do bad, God works in mysterious ways. But once you recognize the divinity within you, then the universe behaves as if you have the authority. And that's why it's so important to keep your word. And what Jesus was trying to tell everybody was that you are God. What Da Vinci tried to do at 80, I did at 6 years old because I had been working on it perhaps from a past life. Now, I'm not trying to say I'm crazy or there's reincarnation or anything, but we know that energy just reboots itself. So we are eternal. So stop panicking, thinking your life is over. You've done this trillions of times. You'll get good at it and we'll be perfect one time if we get conscious. But we have to get conscious, because I can either say I'm the smartest man in the world, that I figured out what nobody else in the world could figure out. With Aristotle, with Plato, Pythagoras, all of them tried to figure this out, but I know I am not smarter than these men. So I know that there's something to the consciousness of carrying things through, because the information and knowledge that I have, I didn't go to school. I had a 1.6 grade point average graduating from high school because I had other things to do. But this information kind of educated me along the way because I was born into it. And now I have the pieces to follow it, and hopefully Chris and maybe Oxford and will do some of the vetting for these things, and we can change the world. But if not, I'll keep doing it, and I'll do it in the next lifetime. If not this one, in the next lifetime after that. Just remember, and another thing, don't forget, you know, you go from positive to negative, everything polarizes positive to negative, then more than likely, with each lifetime, male to female, male to female, if the universe is consistent. I think it is.
He mentions how funny it is that he patented everything he shared with the audience. Then he goes on to dissect the meaning behind the flower of life symbol. Let's hear Terrance's insights.
Well, you know, it's funny, I actually patented 1 squared. All these things that I showed you guys, I've patented all these things. You know why I patented them? Because in 1926, a man named Walter Russell wrote a book called The Universal One, and in it he introduced an entirely new periodic table. And there he introduced the 2 heavy water elements, and then plutonium and deuterium. Both of those, all 4 of those elements that had never been discovered, he sent out to 800 different universities in his book. 2 years later, he watched as other people came and got Nobel Prizes for his work. Why? Because he didn't patent it. He didn't copyright it. So I copywrote all these things and patented all these things before bringing them to you. They are true, and I think there's some value to them. I don't know why I said that. Did I?
You're thinking that the entire money system is off, or we're just thinking the decimal system?
Yeah, it's the decimal system that's off. The money is, there's nothing wrong with the money, but how we deal with the money. But if you can divide money, you can multiply it. It works hand in hand. The idea of, like one of the things I've been saying, the Euclidean mindset has kept us so locked away. Like there's tons of paperwork of Da Vinci working on the flower of life and trying to unravel it. But every single existence, every single example, you see him making straight lines and trying to make these straight lines bend in, and therefore he was never able to open it up. Because the universe is curved, all space is curved. And as a result, what I was doing in trying to find these straight lines, I abandoned the idea of the straight line. The shortest distance between 2 points is curved space, because you cannot force your way straight through space. Even electricity, as it moves from a southern plane to a northern plane, it always goes northeast in its direction. And magnetism, as it expands out, it goes southwestern. And that's the spin. That's how you always know whether it's magnetism or electricity. It's the spin. Is it northeast or is it southwest? But in trying to define curved matter, I'm so sorry, I get so distracted. Trying to define the spaces, it allowed me to see that all of these in between, what we have been dealing with is these petals. All of mankind have dealt with these petals, but it's these other shapes that we've ignored constantly. Well, those other shapes were the in-between spaces. They were the things that filled up the vacuum of space. And all these particles that I have, I think are the full proof of that. And it is also the full proof of the wave particle argument.
Terrance sheds light on a surprising fact. Our planet is steadily drifting away from the sun at a rate of 6 inches per year. What implications might this have for the delicate balance of the Goldilocks zone?
Our planet is moving away from our sun at 6 inches a year. You guys know that. 15 centimeters a year, our planet is pushing away from the sun. So in less than 500 million years, our planet will be out of the Goldilocks zone. Will be somewhere near where Mars is, somewhere halfway between there. So life will not be able to be sustained on this planet anymore. Not just interplanetary, you have to become interstellar. But with approximations, you cannot become interstellar. You cannot become interstellar with a point that will take you all the way over here with a straight line when the actual event is taking place over here. When you're going 600 quadrillion miles, you can't make a mistake. You need precision. And that's what the math is about. These pieces predict the natural distribution of matter and the distribution of where you can find yourself in that space. And I'm confident behind it. For 40 years, I've worked on this. And I think it's ready. And I came out and I was born. The first thing I thought about when I was 5 years old, I was obsessed with bubbles. I was like, why does a bubble take the shape of a ball? Why not a square or a triangle? And I would go and try and make square or triangular bubbles. And you could never do it because it turns out everything expands as a sphere and everything contracts in geometric form. You drop a pebble into the pond, it expands in a perfect sphere unless there's something in the way. The moment it hits the edge of the shore and starts to come back, it's the contracting waves that hit the expanding waves that creates the initial geometries. Everything expands as a sphere, everything contracts in geometry and fits, basically. So what I'm saying, and what I tried to tell you guys earlier, this is not your first time, it's not your first rodeo, and it won't be your last rodeo. Don't panic in this life. You can actually, there's no sense of everything goes to sleep and it wakes back up again. Refolds and unfolds, refolds and unfolds. And if you're wise, if you're careful, because you can remember conscious moments in your life, can't you? You can remember moments when you're like, wait a minute, I'm in a bigger space than just this little body right here. You become fully aware of everything around you. And if you quiet yourself, you can think about those things. Well, apparently I did that at the last passage because when I came into this life, I woke up, remember, don't forget, don't forget, don't forget, don't forget, don't forget. And the first thing I did was worked out the flower of life. When I was 6 years old, I started making these pieces. No, because I don't identify with average. You know, I don't identify with that. When I look in the mirror, I see the creator.
Okay.
You know, I don't see anything short of the creator. There's not one part of me that wasn't made from the creator. So there's not one part of me that's not perfect. Now, maybe my perception and understanding isn't there because I've allowed myself to be influenced by other things, but I see myself in the most humble way as being directly from the creator, and I see everyone else and everything else as being directly from the creator. Even the plastic that makes this up, that carbon is still vibrating at the key of E, breathing in and breathing out. We look at this and call it, but that Browning effect is the life principle continuing on in it. So when I recognize that this is alive, I recognize that I'm alive, and I recognize that this carries the same nature of the creator, then it recognizes that in me. And so there's an equanimity, you know, and I don't see myself above a piece of tissue or below the creator himself. Being able to define the entire electric field or the plasmic field and patent it.
Yeah.
And the things that I discovered with that prove that the Platonic solids, which our entire infrastructure is built off, were only averages and approximations, and that all of the postulates and axioms they've built off of are erroneous. And being able to present that, but also being given the blessing of defining the magnetic field, the feminine side, and patenting those, the expansion or the unfolding of the universe, but then being given the opportunity to define the neutral that sits between it, or the constitution, which is the linchpin that mitigates between the micro, which is the electric world, and the macro, which is the magnetic world. And this works as a bridge, a common factor between. So having discovered and patented the grand unified field equation, and putting it into practice and building all of these new industries that have come from it, from transcendental lighting to tangential flight, to in supersymmetrical systems. I've patented 4 supersymmetrical systems. And a supersymmetrical system is, it always aligns. That's how the universe behaves. And according to science, there are no supersymmetrical systems, because the Platonic solids have a thing called discrete symmetry. And for everybody out there,
I was just about to say,
the Platonic solids were 5 polygons that that are based upon straight lines and flat planes. What Da Vinci tried to do at 80, I did at 6 years old, because I had been working on it perhaps from a past life. The Euclidean mindset has kept us so locked away. Like, there's tons of paperwork of Da Vinci working on the flower of life and trying to unravel it.
Terrance Howard mentioned something about an ancient discovery called the flower of life, which represents one of the oldest images we have.
The oldest images that we have from antiquity and found on every continent is this image where 64 circles are overlapped, and it's called the flower of life. And on every continent it was found, in whatever language, it was always called the flower of life.
Made 6,000 years ago, messes with us because we can't draw a straight line in it. Can we really understand these old shapes, or are we clueless?
Well, 6,000 years ago, or however long ago, someone had the clever idea of saying, you know what, why don't I draw straight lines where the circles overlap?
He questions the use of straight lines in constructing Platonic solids, arguing that energy in the universe is expressed through curved waves due to the principle of equal and opposite reactions.
If they began to average the space where the circles overlap, so that tetrahedron that we see, because we know that there are no straight lines, because all energy has an equal and opposite. Let's pause it for a second, just so I can repeat that. All energy is expressed in motion, all motion expressed in waves, and all waves are curved. Therefore, it is impossible to create a straight line, because every action has the equal and opposite reaction, and the greater that reaction.
Terrance found math problems that arise from creating straight lines where there are none. Let's see his explanation.
The greater the resistance and the greater that curvature. This curvature is the equanimity of all the interactions within a particular system. It all balances out into these perfect spheres, which are magnetic fields around each other, which is a discharging aspect. And where these magnetic fields interact, this is where electricity begins. Where they overlap, they're forced to create spin. But 6,000 years ago, they said they're going to average the spin, and these toroidals are happening, and they generated straight lines and approximated where the energy goes, so you can keep playing it. And now you can clearly see that even the cube, where we get Pythagorean theorem from, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, is an average. It's an approximation. All of these problems arose from them creating straight lines where there were no straight lines. And this has been called, the greatest discovery, basically, in geometry.
Energy's all about that never-ending cycle. Acting? Yeah, it was fun. But physics? That's where Terrance found his spiritual groove. Now he's cooking up these fresh wave and tear mixes, waving goodbye to the old-school Euclidean scene.
and for mathematics. But
And that's the Platonic solids you're speaking about.
The Platonic solids are averages. Euclid went to Egypt and pulled these things and wrote them down, and everyone took credit for them, but they took credit for some falsehoods. So they've watched it go through, and it'll go through the dodecahedron. So what I decided to do, what I was instructed to do, was to take the same flower. You may think you've been here for 20 years on this planet, but we know that energy, it is forever. It continually recycles itself. So you know that you've been a trilobite 350 million years ago, or some part of it. Some parts of you were part of a pterodactyl. Every one of us have been a part of everything in this universe. So if we tap into those things in ourselves and remember those things in ourselves, we have that power. Now, my vocation has been an actor, and I've loved that. I've been able to take care of my family as an actor, but that's never been my passion. I was an actor because it was like Jesus walking on water for tips, because he could do it. That's what he did. It was a natural thing for him. I've always been an empath. I've always been emotionally connected to everything. But the thing that I was most spiritually connected to, that was my driving force, was physics. It was wondering how the universe really came to be. And I might get about talking about this right now, but I've got a book coming out called Does a dollar times a dollar equal a dollar, or does a dollar times a dollar equal $2? And in the process, not only do I explain the depth of the Platonic solids, but I also introduce the new Terran wave conjugations that replace this Euclidean way of life and gives us a three-dimensional way of seeing the world. That's what I'm saying. Do you want to see the world in 2D, or do you want to see it in 3D? How do you have time to really bring yourself back to who you are? Because that's the most important thing. That's the thing that's going to bother you more than anything else. You will look at yourself one day and you won't know who you are because you don't remember who you were. You know, sometime along the way, or maybe at 13 or 14, we let go of the little person that kept us going.
The flower of life, said to be the oldest symbol ever, dates back 6,000 years. Da Vinci and Newton, they were obsessed, spending their lives trying to figure it out.
I want you guys to know about a 6,000-year-old secret. 6,000 years, mankind has been trying to decipher this one little thing called the flower of life. Now, do you know the flower of life? Have you guys ever seen this before? Now, you know this is one of the oldest symbols in human history, right? Or do you not know? This symbol was found in the Temple of Osiris in Egypt, and it had been molecularly burned into the wall. And it's 6,000 years old. This same symbol has been found in the forbidden temples in China, sitting under the fufu dogs, and the foot on it, the flower of life, saying whoever controlled that flower of life controlled the universe. There were secrets in that flower of life that Da Vinci spent his whole life trying to uncover. There were secrets in that flower of life that Newton spent his whole life in secret trying to uncover. The same secrets that Pythagoras was desperately trying to uncover. But their problem was they kept seeing this in a two-dimensional space. They couldn't get it out of this two-dimensional frame, and as a result, they got stuck in this plane, a flat plane. Now, what Da Vinci and all of them wanted to do, they were trying to find a way to bring this flower to life, because what is inside of it? Well, apparently, there were secrets inside of it, shapes.
Nature doesn't follow straight lines, and Terrance proved it with the space between Earth and the Moon. Have we been blinded by our stubborn adherence to tradition? Or are we ready to shake things up with a new perspective?
And all of those other things out of it. But they were misled by something I think called a straight line. You guys believe in straight lines? You believe there's straight lines in the universe? Well, let me hit you with something. All energy in the universe is expressed in what? it's in motion. If something is still, there's no energy. Kinetic, right? All motion is expressed in what? You look at galaxies, are they expressed in straight lines? Expressed in vortices. All vortices are expressed in what? Waves. All waves are curved. Show me a straight line in nature. You show me where the Platonic solids come from. Where do they have their foundations in our universe? Are there any straight lines? If you look at anything, there are no straight lines. That's been the mistake. We've been looking at these straight lines, this Euclidean way of thinking, and missing the curvature of nature. So here we are, back with the curvature of nature, and you have all these little pieces. Now, this has always been an information system. So compare some of these points, take a point here, and say, well, what's the space in between all of these things? Now, they've said that all the in-between spaces, if this is the Earth and this is the moon right here, all this in-between space is filled with what? A void. There's nothing in the void. Well, I found that there is something in the void. The elementary fundamental particles that they've been searching for at the CERN Collider, the Hadron Collider in CERN, I found that their energy signatures matched perfectly to some of the pieces that I was able to pull out of here. The idea of, like one of the things I've been saying, the Euclidean mindset has kept us so locked away. Like there's tons of paperwork of Da Vinci working on the flower of life and trying to unravel it. But every single existence, every single example, you see him making straight lines and trying to make these straight lines bend in, and therefore he was never able to open it up. Because all the universe is curved, all space is curved. And as a result, what I was doing in trying to find these straight lines, I abandoned the idea of the straight line. The shortest distance between 2 points is curved space, because you cannot force your way straight through space. Even electricity, as it moves from a southern plane to a northern plane, it always goes northeast in its direction. And magnetism, as it expands out, it goes southwesterly. And that's the spin. That's how you always know whether it's magnetism or electricity. It's the spin. Is it northeast or is it southwest? But in trying to define curved matter, I'm so sorry, I get so distracted. Trying to define the spaces, it allowed me to see that all of these in between, what we have been dealing with is these petals. All of mankind have dealt with these petals, but it's these other shapes that we've ignored constantly. Well, those other shapes were the in-between spaces. They were the things that filled up the vacuum of space. And all these particles that I have, I think are the full proof of that. And it is also the full proof of the wave particle argument.
Terrance Howard says it's all about chemical reactions. He wonders why every bubble we blow turns into a circle.
Everything is based on chemical reactions. In order for me to become a character, I have to change my chemical composition of how I'm thinking, and as a result, that changes how I position myself, which changes how the heat is generated and transferred out in and out of my body. Everything comes down to chemistry. You know, so acting in physics, in physics, when two things are drawn to each other, it's because they are of similar charge. It's not positive, because they say negatives attract. But cold air drops down. Does it attract to the hot air rising up? No, it passes right by each other. Because negatives, opposites don't attract, it's positives that attract to each other. Two positives drawn to each other, two negatives discharge each other. So it's all about physics to me. It's all about chemistry, and it's how the physics, how another actor is relating to me. A slight change in his body language changes my tone. It's all physics. And I came out and I was born. The first thing I thought about when I was 5 years old, I was obsessed with bubbles. I was like, why does a bubble take the shape of a ball? Why not a square or a triangle? And I would go and try and make square or triangular bubbles. And we could never do it, because it turns out everything expands as a sphere and everything contracts in geometric form. You drop a pebble into the pond, it expands in a perfect sphere unless there's something in the way. The moment it hits the edge of the shore and starts to come back, it's the contracting waves that hit the expanding waves that creates the initial geometries. Everything expands as a sphere, everything contracts in geometry and fits, basically. So what I'm saying, and what I tried to tell you guys earlier, this is not your first time, it's not your first rodeo, and it won't be your last rodeo. Don't panic in this life. You can actually, there's no sense of everything goes to sleep and it wakes back up again. Refolds and unfolds, refolds and unfolds. And if you're wise, if you're careful, because you can remember conscious moments in your life, can't you? You can remember moments when you're like, wait a minute, I'm in a bigger space than just this little body right here. You become fully aware of everything around you. And if you quiet yourself, you can think about those things. Well, apparently I did that at the last passage, because when I came into this life, I woke up, remember, don't forget, don't forget, don't forget, don't forget, don't forget. And the first thing I did was work out the flower of life. When I was 6 years old, I started making these pieces.
Terrance Howard credits his research breakthroughs to energy from his past life. Are we just carrying echoes from before, or is there something more to it?
What Da Vinci tried to do at 80, I did at 6 years old because I had been working on it perhaps from a past life. Now, I'm not trying to say I'm crazy or there's reincarnation or anything, but we know that energy does not, energy just reboots itself. So we are eternal, so stop panicking, thinking your life is over. You've done this trillions of times. You'll get good at it and we'll be perfect one time if we get conscious. But we have to get conscious, because I can either say I'm the smartest man in the world, that I figured out what nobody else in the world could figure out. With Aristotle, with Plato, Pythagoras, all of them tried to figure this out, but I know I am not smarter than these men. So I know that there's something to the consciousness of carrying things through, because the information and the knowledge that I have, I didn't go to school. I had a 1.6 grade point average graduating from high school because I had other things to do. But this information kind of educated me along the way because I was born into it. And now I have the pieces to follow it, and hopefully Chris and maybe Oxford and will do some of the vetting for these things, and we can change the world. But if not, I'll keep doing it, and I'll do it in the next lifetime. If not this one, and the next lifetime after that. Just remember, and another thing, don't forget, you know, you go from positive to negative, everything polarizes positive to negative, then more than likely, with each lifetime, male to female, male to female, if the universe is consistent. I think it is.
Terrance Howard throws shade at traditional math on elementary particles, insisting it needs a serious reboot.
What I've done is I've figured out about 7 different elementary particles, fundamental particles. And then there were secondary generational particles that seemed to occur. And when these things began to build up more and more, they began to create their own systems. And these systems is what I brought to Oxford, because I would like for you guys to examine them, put them to test, because I bet you will find all the fundamental particles that they've been looking for in the unified theory of the universe. It's a big statement, but I've got a lot of stuff to back it up if given the opportunity to do so. But the flower of life has been opened, and when we get an opportunity, I'd love to show you some of these things. Can I go on?
Yep, you good?
Mm-hmm. I can't, without being able to show the pieces, it's a whole different monster. But all of these wave conjugations, all of these states of matter, all of these things, it's time for that to be changed now. We have changed all of our buildings to be aerodynamic. Our airplanes are no longer based on a two-dimensional Euclidean way of life, but our math is still based on a two-dimensional way. And I think in order for us to reach the future, we have to examine that. Do you guys know about loops in math? Do you believe in loops? Do you know the square root of 2? Do you think that's a loop? Any other number that above 2, that you put in and you cube and you square and divide by 2, by the 6th operation, it has moved into an exponential number that you can't even imagine. Any number below 2 that you do that same operation with, it will go into an exponentially small matter and number. This is what we call a loop. It is illogical, it doesn't make sense, and it does not make math make sense. So these are some things that I'm bringing to the fore and that I would like to question. I would like to audit the math, the world of mathematics, and I would like to audit how we view the Platonic solids, because I think the new wave conjugations will tell a better story of how our world works.
Our currency system's flawed by greed, so it's time to recheck math and physics basics. But are we willing to fix the mess greed made, or just keep going the same way?
And our system of exchanging with currency is flawed because of greed. There's not like if 1 times 1 equals 2, we've got an equilibrium of balance. 1 times 1 equals 1, you've got loss. When 1 times 1 equals 3 or more, you're talking about over unity and supersymmetry. And that's how you get the universe to work for you. Instead of using just the solar voltaics off of it, you also use the piezoelectric effects of it. You use other things to make greater unity. But 1 times 1 equaling 1, when it could also equal a pound times a pound equaling a pound, when it could also equal $4 or $10 or $100, does that make sense to you? Do you think the banks are abusing that? What's a quarter times a quarter? If I ask anybody in this room, what's a quarter times a quarter? That's 25 times 25. The computer will the calculator will tell you it's 6.25 cents. But we know 25 pence times 25 pence is 625 pence. That's 6 pounds and 25 pence, but the computer or the banks only have to give you 6 1/4 cents reference for it. Or let's say you put a dime times a dime. Let me get this out. Say you take a dime times a dime. You put that in your calculator, it says 1 cent. 0.10 times 0.10 is 1 cent. But we know a dime times a dime is a whole dollar. But the banks gives us money based on that evaluation. Is that fair? And this is all legal. Do you think it's not happening in the banks? This is what 1 times 1 equaling 1 has got us. This inconsistency of our monies and our economy is sitting in the balance. And the rest of our future is sitting in the balance because our science has been stunted as a result of the problems in mathematics, because math asks for the basic laws of physics to break down in order for 1 times 1 to equal 1. In order for 1 times 0 to equal nothing, laws of conservation of energy has to disappear. And math is the foundating laws of math is supposed to support the laws of physics. They are arm in arm. They cannot be in controversy with each other. So we need an audit on the Platonic solids, we need an audit on the square root of 2, and we need an audit on action and reaction, or we either got to get rid of, we say 1 times 1 equals 1 and there's no action and reaction. One or the other, you can't have both. And until we make that change, we're in trouble. We're gonna be stunted as a species.
Terrance Howard says we've got it wrong about magnetism and radiation being all bad. They're actually crucial for making new stuff.
I mean, you got to remember, we've been here since the very beginning. There is no good or bad. It's just your perspective that you're sitting from. Is it beneficial for everyone around, or is it not? There's something that has to build up, and there's something that needs to tear it down. What we call the tearing of it down, we call it evil or bad, but that's the process of magnetism or radiation. Radiation tears apart that which was concentrically brought together through electric potential and electric force. Electricity is always seeking a higher pressure condition, trying to get to the center of the apex, whereas magnetism is spinning southwesterly, trying to get out. But the magnetism is necessary because unless it broke apart that which was collected together, you would never have any new material to rebuild again. And that's the breathing in and the breathing out of universal purpose. Now, so at the end of the day, since the Creator made all things, and everything came from the Creator.
Right.
Terrence Howard says science just helps us understand nature, and he thinks calling something bad is all about how you see it.
Well, science is to explain natural phenomena.
Okay.
The whole point of science was to explain natural phenomena, and it should coincide with what takes place in the observable universe. And that should strengthen one's faith. And that's why I said, as above, so below. So if here, everything has an equal and opposite mate, and is necessary in order for the proliferation of life and the continuation of the cycle that is just sleeping, and then you refold again, and you're reborn again. There is nothing that is bad except how you are perceiving it, and whether it's beneficial to everyone around you, because something needs to tear things apart. The FDA had 6 different grand juries to try and indict this man. And every time they did that, he had his patients that came in there, patients that were supposed to be dead 25 years ago, that are sitting there with their entire families, saying that I am here as a result of this man's work. But if I had followed my course, my mother would still be here. But again, that's like the time traveler, he developed the time machine so he can go back and get his wife, but it was his wife that led him to build the time machine. So no matter what, he was always going to be repeating that. And I had to recognize that the universe doesn't make any mistakes. My mother was here long enough to do what she needed to do, but her passing reminded me that I had more work to do, and that I was not fulfilling my true capacity. Wow. And so I stepped out to do what I needed to do, and that's with the world of science. That's just trying to illuminate and elevate our species so that we can become balanced with the universe. There's 4 levels of species. A level 1 society has complete control over his planet. And the resources, and are able to balance with it. A level 2 society would have complete control over their sun and the solar system. A level 3 society would have complete control of the galaxy and its energy, and able to work with it. And level 4 society, civilization would have complete control over the universe and know how to work within it. Well, that's not possible when you have imaginary straight lines in a world, in the universe, where if all energy in the universe is expressed in motion, and all motion is expressed in waves, and all waves are curved. So it's like, where did they get the straight lines to make the Platonic solids? If every action in the universe has an equal and opposite reaction, which we know it does, and therefore the greater the action, the greater the reaction, the greater the reaction, the greater the resistance, the greater the resistance, the greater the curvature. Therefore, everything has curvature. So where did they get the straight lines to make the Platonic solids? When I was examining the human body, and the digits are fingers, they have the same nerves that run into our teeth. The same exact nerves. Our teeth would be fingers. They're an example. That's why you don't go and let them take your teeth out to put somebody else's pretend smile on you. But also with the human mind, over 60% of our mind is geared towards our digits, our hands. So if you're only writing with one hand, you're losing half of your brain's potential. And if our legs behave the way our hands behave, where only one leg was dominant, then we would be crippled. And so I started writing when I was a teenager. I started writing backwards first I started writing with my left hand. Then I was like, why am I only writing in one direction? And what I found when I switched from a right hand to my left hand, that it was a different personality. It was a different kind of writing. It was like my brain had reversed itself. But then when I started writing backwards, it polarized.